So today, I want to talk about unOrdinary again, because the series has really been popping off. And the latest chapter that released last week is something that really built up my vibe to even make this video. I was just like, I gotta talk about unOrdinary, because the latest chapter that came out, if you have read it, you know what I'm going to talk about, has made a very interesting revelation. And that is the fact that we get a little hint at John and John's mother, which is incredibly fascinating because, come to find out, John's mother, from what we could assume, is incredibly powerful and is tied in with Spectre, which is super, super huge. Like a huge bombshell for unOrdinary with that reveal alone. But before I get ahead of myself, let's back up, let's talk about some things. So, what's going on in the story, to kind of get everybody up to speed before I really talk about the chapter, because I've been meaning to talk about it. So, as we know, in Season 2 of unOrdinary, Sera, she lost her ability. Thanks to, getting it pretty much just powered down completely, she lost her ability, and then she started to work with Spectre, this very shady organization that says, hey, if you work for us, we'll help you get your ability back, even though they're technically the ones that caused Sera to lose her ability in the first place. They target individuals and pretty much remove their ability from them. And so, it's kind of like, so the company that removed my ability, I now gotta work for it to get my ability back, and she's pretty much on a very short leash, so to say. And so, when you see Sera's overall interaction with Spectre, you're constantly feeling this tension throughout the story recently of unOrdinary, is that when are they gonna turn against Sera? Are they really who they say they are? Are they really trying to better the world and help people out, or are they just saying that and putting up airs or whatever to make Sera assume that they might be good, but in reality they're very shady and evil and may have something to do with some of the vigilantes in the previous parts of the story from disappearing? There's a lot of things to consider. So when we see the latest chapter that came out, it all comes back and you're like, okay, something's going on here, because for one, the entire database and all that of taking the information or whatever and then bringing it back to Spectre, it makes you wonder whose side is Sera really on? Is she really on the good guy's side? Is she on the bad guy's side? What's this information about John's mother? But also, when you see how she got caught technically at the end of the latest chapter, it's like, oh no, like, is she about to get imprisoned? Is she about to be in a situation where she could potentially die? Because, that's a thing that this series could actually do, and that's something I've been wanting to talk about. So, obviously, unOrdinary, it does have a dark premise to it. There is some darker elements within the story, like characters have died. We've had the entire stuff with Arlo, for instance. He found out, like, his best friend is dead because the government kind of covered it up, and, he was trying to be, like, a vigilante. And so when you see some of this very dark parts of the story where characters have died, it makes you wonder if, like, maybe one of our characters might die. Like, I doubt Sera is going to die, I want to be honest with you, but it does put in that possibility, like with everything, with all these characters we have, that something's bound to happen, because our group of characters are technically up against this secret organization. It isn't just Spectre, it's like the authorities, and it's the government, etc. within the story, so they're up against such a massive entity that just a group of high school kids are not going to be able to just deal with it by themselves. It's going to take a lot more than just them to be able to bring it down. And obviously, Spectre might play a role in this and help them out, but when you just see everything that's been building up slowly with Spectre, you really can't trust them. Just something about everything with Spectre feels off. Like they are not all they seem, because we have found out in recent chapters of unOrdinary that there's multiple factions. Obviously, the faction that Sera is a part of inside of Spectre is more on the good side, but we have seen some darker elements of Spectre, and it's highly likely that they have been infiltrated to some degree by maybe the authorities, and they're manipulating things behind the scenes, maybe for research or something else, maybe the bigwigs at the top, who really knows? It might be all interconnected to some degree, but I think it is super interesting where Sera's at right now in the story, because now she's infiltrating into this secret research facility pretty much, trying to get this secret information, and her ability deactivates thanks to what Spectre did to her in the first place. Like, let's just talk about that, okay? So we've already seen foreshadowing and hints in recent chapters, and when Sera uses her ability, that her ability doesn't operate that well anymore. Like, she can use it sometimes, but it doesn't last long. Like, if she tries to use it, it might last maybe for 30 seconds or maybe a minute, but it just deactivates. And if we go back to Sera from, like, Season 1, she was able to activate it anytime she wanted, and obviously it led to a lot of growth and character development for Sera. So in a way, for her losing her ability, it did allow her to mature as a person. So it is a good thing for her character, in terms of character development, etc. But if we're looking at just like her ability not being able to be used right now, everything about what's happening within the latest chapter is the result of Spectre powering her down. And it makes you wonder, maybe they're trying to offer Sera on a silver platter. Who knows? Maybe they want her to get caught, maybe they want the information, but then throw Sera to the wolves, basically. There's multiple directions that the story obviously can go, and that's what makes it super fascinating, because we can see that apparently some individuals, they are collecting abilities through that research we saw in the chapter. So if they're collecting abilities, who would they really want out of all the abilities we've seen? Sera's ability makes sense. They would definitely want Sera's ability. I mean, John is another contender, especially now that we know he is related to everything going on with this organization. So when you just look at everything, it's like, okay, this is not looking too good for John at all. Maybe it was a good thing that he started off with no ability at a young age, or he might have been targeted if he did show his ability soon as he was born. So there's multiple angles to look at unOrdinary at this time, and that's what is super fascinating. So, honestly, in terms of what Sera's situation is, it's clear that she's isolated right now. Like, she doesn't have the help of John, Arlo, and all of them to come in and save her, because she's by herself, in enemy territory, and like I said, her ability pretty much deactivated, and cameras are being able to see her. You know, that means an alarm is going to start sounding, and she's going to be getting chased by people in there. So for all we know, when the next chapter rolls around, Sera could be captured and imprisoned. And imagine if this is where the story goes. Like, if Sera does hypothetically get caught, you know, John and Arlo, they're gonna know Spectre did something, or maybe something messed up, and they're gonna go after Spectre. And then Spectre's like, oh no, she got caught by so-and-so, or this research facility, and then they're gonna have to go after that. And it might lead John and Arlo getting wrapped up in Spectre and joining forces with them to maybe save Sera, if that's obviously where the story's gonna go. It's just me theory crafting at this point. But the big point I'm trying to say is that the story is in a very interesting place, and I've been really enjoying unOrdinary, because, like, it's easily one of my favorite webtoons to actually read on a weekly basis when it, you know, releases. Now that Hardcore Leveling Warrior has come to an end, sadly, I love that series, and it's sad to see it actually end recently. You know, obviously, the only long series I've been following is unOrdinary, if we're talking about, like, the biggest series I've been following, besides, I guess, Tower of God. But, I'm very sad that Hardcore Leveling Warrior ended, but at the very least I have, you know, unOrdinary, because unOrdinary has been incredible. Easily one of the most consistent reads, like, out of all reads I've been doing. Not just, let's say, for Webtoon, but for just any read. Like, if I'm looking at, let's say, manga and all that, I have to say, I sometimes look forward to unOrdinary more than any other series throughout the week. I really mean that. I really, really do, because the latest chapters have been so good. Like, I have been on the edge of potentially buying coins to actually read ahead. That's how much I have been enjoying unOrdinary. Because, like, John's development, as I talked about in my previous video I made, like, a few weeks back, I've loved John's development, seeing him mature as a person, and being able to work with someone like Blake. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal to see that. I've been loving the development all throughout that. But then also seeing just Arlo's maturity, Sera's maturity, and just the whole clubhouse working together. Just everything about the story has been so good, and the writer has finally, like, steered the series in a very, very cool direction, because at the first part of part 2, many were, you know, actually under the impression that it felt very slow. But I actually like the slow gradual build-up, because that slow gradual build-up built up to where we're at right now, and we're on a good journey. Like, we're on a really good roller coaster right now, and I cannot wait to see the end result. So yeah, I wanted to talk about my excitement of the latest chapter. It's a good chapter. If you have not read it, I really recommend you do. And if you have not read unOrdinary, I recommend you do. Like, you really should. It is a really good webtoon. Like I said, easily one of my favorite webtoons I have ever read. And if you looking for something unique, give it a shot. You'll like it. I'll even have a link down in the description. You can click on the link, and it'll allow you to start the series if you've never started the series. And if you do click on the link, just as for transparent reasons, it does help me out when you click it. But just because it does help me out doesn't mean that I'm not telling the truth. I really love unOrdinary. It is a really good read, and I have been really enjoying the read since, honestly, before Season 2, began. I made a video on unOrdinary like a year and a half ago, like, talking about Season 1. So, I've been actively following it for that long, and here we are. But, yeah, once again, if you want to start the series and you want to help me out as well, click that link down below in the description, take you to unOrdinary, and with that, guys, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.